Okay. Well, if I knew Nicholas was going to be such a great speaker, I would have asked to go first. Okay, so to the question, how did it start? Okay, it started with me. I was a consultant on a project for a former employer. My first employer in the construction industry was a company called Brown and Root, based in Houston, Texas, and I was back there working with them. I left them for a different company, Bechtel, to go back to my wife's place where she came from, on the West Coast. But I went back with them to work. I guess it was. I left them in 1982, and I came back in 1991, right? But in the consulting mode. And it was on a project for something like this. It was for Georgia Pacific, and it was a complete paper mill. And I noticed that, and I don't remember exactly how or why I came to notice it, but I'm curious, that there was almost no overlap between what should be done each week, this is in design, and what was done each week. And so I brought the design leads all together, right, and said, I doubt you have data, but if you do, I would, be nice of you to share it. But what do you think, can you share, what percentage of the tasks you plan to do each week do you actually get done? Yep. And the first guy said, maybe 70%. And the next guy said, no, man, you're crazy. You're not even close. For me, it's 30%, right? And they all had a different number, but they got to talking about that thing, right? That business about how well are we doing? And that opened the door for doing it better, right? So that started me off looking for. I found one scheduling consultant in Sao Paulo, Brazil, who was who was actually monitoring that metric, right? What percentage of tasks we did done each day, week, and then of course that prompts the question: well, why did you not get done all of them? Right? So, I'm going backwards, sorry. Okay, so I'm going to tell you a story about kind of what I went on to, though I'm going back in time here, but I want to talk about the importance of really engaging the people and going to look at the work directly, right? And so I was with Bechtel out of San Francisco, and they asked me to go to a project where they were having challenges, and it was a nuclear project for the South Texas Nuclear Project. And the first thing I did when I got on site was I did a survey of the craft workers, asking them to identify what interrupts their work, what causes delays, what causes problems, right? And thinking that, because from my previous experience, I had learned that they tended to know more about what was actually going on than anyone else, closer to the work. And the pipe fitter said about half of the piping isometric projections are wrong. The piping work packages, right? There's something wrong. There's some inaccuracy in specification or in materials, components, right? And so I arranged to meet with the you can imagine on one of these massive projects, I went, we go up the steps into his office, and it's an office made of a bunch of different trailers all linked together. And it's an ocean of desks, right? And as we walk through the desks, hey, Bob, how many work packages did you get out today? Got to pick it up. Hey, Jimmy, how many work packages did you get out today? Okay. So by the time, well before I got to his office at the end of this long march, I knew the pipe fitters were right. Okay? But I explained the findings, said what the survey had revealed, and then arranged to have a random sample of packages examined, and it turned out to measure 47% defects. Right? So they were right. Okay, and there's, I learned about this later, but there's this idea of servant leadership, and it kind of, it advocates the opposite of normal practice. We tend to think of organizations as generating orders at the top and having them executed at the bottom, right? Okay, well, that doesn't, I think you might agree that doesn't work absolutely perfectly. And when Nicholas was talking, it occurred to me that, well, just to share a factoid, my last PhD student did her research on applying how to improve psychological safety on construction projects. Right? And is the term psychological safety, is that in use? Yeah, okay. So I'll give you just one example. If you make a mistake, do you feel safe that you'll get help, or you fear that you're going to get harm? All right. All right. Okay. So I think that bunch of what Last Planner has to do with is engaging people and making them feel psychologically safe to ask questions, try things out, and learn from them. To speak truth to power. Okay. So going back to the Last Planner system, I came up with this idea that a planning and control system can be captured in 4 different pieces: what should be done, what can be done, what will be done, and what got done. Right? And the reason for this one is that I wanted the commitment of the people that are going to do the work to make sure that they had I'm getting ahead of myself, I'm sorry. So let me just, I'll unfold it as we go. Right, so let me look at this in pieces. Here we go. Okay, so this is the overall schema, and the idea is it's to have a master plan that is simply key milestones in their relationships to one another. Right? Not a detailed plan. And the reason for that is that all plans are forecasts, and all forecasts are wrong. And the further ahead you try to forecast, the more wrong you're likely to be, right? And the greater the level of detail in which you forecast, the more wrong you will be. Yep. So why do it? Right. So that we start with this. This is good. Well, it worked for a minute. Okay, and then just to roam through it really quickly. So we'd start with a master plan, and then we move into these different phases of work. We collaboratively develop, plan how to do that work. And so here you would have, well, site preparation, maybe doing underground work, right? Placing foundations, placing equipment, right? So you're working your way through the project. And the people that are going to be engaged in directing and doing the work in each of those phases produce the plan about how it's going to be done. And they do it through what we call pull, which I'm sure you've all learned about. Let's find out. Okay, well, that's that thing. Okay, so I should have said this, that, right? So if this is true, and I think everyone in the world knows except construction that it's true, okay, then this is the countermeasure. Plan in progressively greater detail as you get closer to doing the work. And so doing this, going from the master schedule to the phase schedule, is the first big step in that progress, right, in applying this rule. Okay. Thank you. Almost as good as beer. Okay. Okay, so the way the methodology for doing phase planning was developed, it was kind of by accident. I was part of a team of, or working with a team of different companies brought together to design and build a series of fully enclosed amphitheaters for performing arts in different parts of the United States. And the team was intended to do the first one, right, in Dallas, Texas. And Mike Daly he is an architect working for a smallish company in Fort Collins, Colorado, but they have all of the technical people that are needed in order to do a project. But of course, then the trades work are done by the different crafts. Yep. And Mike said, well, instead of planning it forward, let's plan it backwards, right? Well, and I must admit, initially, I didn't quite see the reason for that, right? And what do you think the reason might be? Don't hesitate. Okay, so he said he finally persuaded us, and we started out doing it, and that's how the stickies on the wall method became created, right? And the idea is that if you're planning backwards, you're following the path of customer supplier, right? So who's the customer? Once you all understand what it is that you're trying to achieve at the end of this phase, we want to have a foundation system that will support a building with these loads in these places, right? Then we can work backwards to say, well, if that's the outcome, then what's the last thing that gets done before that we can declare victory? Yes? And then they can say, what do you need from the next person, the previous person? Who's your supplier? Right? Just a real life example. I was just observing a pool planning session. One of the electrical engineer, Rebecca, I went to her and asked, Rebecca, what is it that who do you need, what information do you need, and from whom, right? And she was maybe if this is the entire stretch of the work, right? She was pretty much back in here, right? She's pretty late. And if Bill would just give me the horsepower requirements, when I need them, then I could calculate all the voltage needed for the project and the factory, and that's what I need. But he doesn't do that. Well, Bill's right here. Let's go talk to Bill, right? And I say, so they know each other, of course. They've been working together on projects for over the years, but they apparently had never had this discussion, right? And so she explains to Bill what she wants, and he says, sure, I didn't know that's what you needed, right? Okay? And do you think that might actually happen in real life? That was real life. Okay. So if you're working backwards that way, you're much more likely, when you run it forward, if you think about it like a film, that you're going to have everything going to people when they need it, and they'll be ready to use it. Yeah? Okay? So, how many of you have been involved in a pool planning exercise? Oh yeah, okay, so I'm preaching the gospel to the choir. But that's good. Okay, and here's just some illustrations. And I think that what this is really is a place where the working together and taking responsibility, making commitments, right, all comes to real life. Okay. And this is just a diagram of what what one looks like. It's basically a logic network, right? Where this is where you start. The date phase of work can start. Here's the date when the work must end, right? And this would be where you have a description of what's the desired outcome of the phase, right? And then that can be understood in relationship to what it leads to, what it enables, right? If this is foundations, then this is going to be structures, right? And, by the way, we talk about the critical path. There's a critical path here, right? It can be calculated based upon the dependencies and the durations of each of these little boxes, right? And that tells us what tasks we need to do when, right? Now, when we apply this going forward, right, to the next phase of the last planner system, we have to get more granular, right? We have to break these pieces into the operations that are involved in them, right? Okay, so you might have in one of these boxes, you might have building, say, or maybe even stabilizing the walls of for the building footprint, right? And it would be even important in that case to really to make decisions about, well, how are you going to go around the walls? And Greg, not they had planned to start on, let's say that's the east wall, and they didn't have the soil nails that they needed for that side, so they started on that wall. And the project never recovered because it threw everything out of whack, right? So, but that's just a way of talking about the progressively more detailed planning as you move through time. Okay. So these are what you do. This is the basic process for pool planning. Find deliverables and scope. What will count as successful completion? That's in that diagram. It was at the outcome. Develop the logic network using backward pass. Apply unpadded durations to activities. Replan is needed to generate a buffer. So you're trying to provide contingency of time, right? Because you can expect that there's some uncertainty and variation you're going to encounter. There we go. Okay. Okay, now, so the next piece of the system is called look-ahead planning, and I'm thinking right now, this is a time for when I start thinking how to rethink the system. And I've published maybe 4 different versions of the last planner system over time. And every time trying to improve it and to incorporate innovations that have been developed in practice, right, out in the field. So I'm thinking about changing that heading to make ready planning, just because that's basically what it does, right? This is where you check to see that you have everything you need to do the work that was developed in that phase plan, right? Okay. So let's see what we've got. I may come back to that. Okay, this is a really old slide, but it still works. So you probably all, or maybe you do, or maybe you don't, have the understanding of there's critical inputs that are needed in order to do, of different types, right, that are needed to do work. And so you can name some of them: materials, workers, equipment, design information, and so forth, right? So what the first thing that happens in this make ready process is that you just say, okay, let's start with this. There's no X's in any boxes, right? And the rule is you don't put an X in the box until you know that you have it, right? If you need to have a change order or some contract information, you have it. And this is opposed to the standard practice, I suggest, that you assume you have it until you don't, right? That's not a foolproof way of getting through a project. Okay. So. Okay, so let's sure. Okay. Well, let me just make a few more comments here. So that's identify and remove constraints, and then break down tasks from processes into operations. Makes it more, right? And then the critical piece is to design the operations, each of the operations that are to be performed. And if you haven't done the design of the operation, you can't assess it to determine if it can be done safely, to quality requirements, and to cost and time expectations, right? And to develop, this is one place where the lower level foremen tend to get involved, or lower level operators, right? This applies to design, to construction, to procurement, to everything, right? So, okay. Going backwards. Okay. We're a little too soon for him. All right. Well, let me go on here. Okay, this is Sidney Dekker, who's a Swedish academic and an expert in the area of safety and in risk management, if you will. And I've had him come out all the way out to California to talk to us, and it is very interesting. He speaks the truth fervently. Okay, so he says there's this thing that some people can be divided into two camps. One group thinks that systems and processes can be designed to be perfectly safe and reliable. And it's people that screw it up. The other group think the opposite. No system can be designed to be perfectly complete and reliable. And when they work, it's because it's people actions. It's actions of individuals, right, that make it work. So I'm with Sidney. Okay, so this gets us to one of the key elements in the last planner system is that no matter how important and strident you might be, no matter how loudly you yell or speak, you're not giving an order, right? And Greg, going back to Greg Howell, he's a great source of examples. What would I say here? All right. So we wrote and published in 1993 a series of 4 basic papers that described the last planner system, right? And the first one was called Beyond Can Do. And we traded off. He would lead the writing in one, we'd both write them, but be the lead author in one. I would do the second one. He did the third one. I did the fourth one. He did the first one because he was a lieutenant commander in the U.S. Navy during the Vietnam War. And he was responsible for a construction platoon, right? And the motto of the Seabees, as they were called, and are called, is can do, right? And he said he just struggled for some time in trying to understand, well, how to get beyond that, right? Are we asking people to give their all, to leave it on the field, right? And can we do that and reasonably expect them to do it? Well, when people are shooting at you, right, it's a little different than construction, but not too much. Right? Okay. So it gets to this point. If you can't make a promise, if you can't say no, you can't make a promise, right? You think that's true? Think of it for a minute. So if we're asking people to commit and to engage in developing and we really are dependent upon, it's a chain of promises, right? And the project itself is a promise. And so you have to be able to say no to a request if you want to have people commit, right? That doesn't mean arbitrarily, right? But there's a process called the reliable promising process that can be practiced and as a way of improving your own ability to make good promises. Right? And the first step in that process is to make sure that you understand the request. Right? Let's see if I think I may have. I put it down, didn't I? Yes, I did. Here we go. Okay. Okay, so this is a sequence here. So you have a customer, and it starts and goes this way, right? So someone makes a request of someone, right? Can you put the windows in that wall on Tuesday? Okay. And the first response is, I want to make sure you understand exactly what he means, he or she. Right? And you can ask for more detail. Well, say, now, do we know what windows and which ones go where? And are they on a hand? So it's not prudent to move forward until you're sure you have an understanding of what's asked. And at that point, it might be possible to just immediately say, yes, sir, yes, I can, I promise, or no, I can't. But usually you have to do some checking, right? Have to see if you have room in your calendar and if you can actually get everything you need to do the work properly, right? So you might go back and there might be some problems with that when you think about it, about whether you can do it or not. And the next thing is counter proposals. So what if I can't do everything you ask, but I can do the first part of it? Would that be acceptable? Right? Yeah? And so you don't just say no, but you don't say yes until it's appropriate. Right? So let's see. So that's a negotiation. If there's a commitment or a clear inability to come to an agreement, then that can happen. But then if there isn't, there's performance, then a declaration of completion, we're done, right? And then the customer, whoever that is, needs to make a declaration of satisfaction. Right? Or not. And you can imagine circumstances in which would cause a failure in this cycle at that point. For example, the requester might have failed to specify that the toilets should be flamingo pink, right? Or something such, yeah? Okay. And I think that this is an occasion for learning, right? We can learn to make better promises. And we do that by following this process to the extent that we can. And when it doesn't work, treating it like a failure in physical execution. And we go back and understand it so that we don't repeat the same mistakes again. Okay. Okay, so here's some differences between what I was trying to replace, the traditional way of doing planning and control in construction, and the last planner. So, planner's plan. I guess this wants to be up here. So, in traditional construction, planner's plan and do. Okay, that's in the last planner. Planning is done collaboratively. The thermostat's a thermostat model of control, entirely reactive. Did you get it done or didn't you? And in the last planner, it's a combination of proactive, making ready, and of course reacting if it fails in order to understand and prevent repetition. Right? Inconsistent learning from planned failures, systematic learning. Scheduled tasks are pushed onto doers without regard for readiness. Doers are required to commit only to ready tasks. Right? And this, I'll hold that for a second. It's assumed that planning can produce perfect plans. It's assumed that all plans are forecasts and all forecasts are wrong. Okay. So it couldn't be more different. All right. Oh, and there's some things I haven't talked about, but can if you wish. So these are the functions that are performed within the system, and these are the methods, the primary methods used in order to do them. And I have not talked about this or that. Okay? But what I really want to emphasize is this one: commit only to tasks that are well-defined, sound, sequenced, and properly sized. And that's where saying, yes, if, right? As long as it's reasonable to do so, and then being able, having the psychological safety to say no, unless it really should and can be done. Okay? Okay. Some key points: systems are executed by people. Systems are executed by people are social as well as technical. And this is Sidney Dekker saying, as opposed to the traditional view that people are what screw up otherwise perfect systems, people are what can make systems work. Reliable promising is the social glue in human systems, but you can't make a promise if you can't say no. And being able to say no requires accepted rules of behavior to which everyone in the system can appeal. And that's where training and then implementation comes in. The rule: commit only to doing tasks that both should and can be done. Okay. Thank you.